Of the many differences between the original Hollow Knight and Silksong, one of the most notable for me was just how good Silksong looks. Hollow Knight already looks stunning, but you can tell Silksong had a lot more time to cook because of all the little details in the environment. Not only that, but the area diversity is much higher as well. You go to more varied locations like a dingy prison, a creepy mental ward, and a coral kingdom fallen to ruin beneath the sands of time. But with all these areas, I have to rank them worst to best. So what exactly counts as an area? Well, I had a few different ideas, but what I ended up settling on is every area where the name appears big on the screen the first time you go there, which means smaller quote-unquote areas like Bright Vein or Volt Nest will just be treated as parts of their respective areas. There's also a few exceptions though. I decided not to rank the towns as I felt their functionality differs too much from all the other areas. It would be next to impossible to compare Bone Bottom to the entirety of Teep Docks, for example. If it's any consolation though, it seems like the fan favorite town is Bellheart, which I suppose makes sense since it feels the biggest and is also where you can get your bell home. This criteria also means that I'm ranking each section of the Citadel separately, which is important because as a whole, it would easily be the #1 spot, no contest. But when taking each part on its own, some of them ranked a little lower than I would have expected. There's also two edge cases of areas. Those areas are Weave Nest Atla, which doesn't show up with a big name when you enter, but it does have an entire map to itself, and Grand Gate, which does the same thing. For the purposes of this list, I decided not to rank them on their own. Grand Gate is part of Choral Chambers, and Weave Nest Atla is part of Moss Grotto. Overall, I'd say that ranking the areas is harder and more complicated than ranking the bosses, and that's because there's just more to consider. The layout is important, but so is the exploration, enemies, music, aesthetic, secrets, platforming, and hazards. With all of that yapping out of the way though, it's time to rank. Well, I just wonder what the bottom spot could possibly be. No, but actually though, it's not that. How could it be when this area exists? 29. Putrified Ducts. The one saving grace of Bilewater, in my opinion, is the music. The music for that area is fantastic, but Putrified Ducts? Well, let's just say I don't even remember what the song for this place is. Not to say that it's bad, but it's definitely a lot less memorable. Putrified Ducts is kind of funny because it basically just boils down to being a couple of straight lines, riddled with the most annoying mosquito enemies that you've ever seen in your entire life, and these big moss charger guys that do double damage and jump. But that's not all, there's also these plants that trap you in place, and they're definitely strategically put so that you run into them while getting chased by something else. I can appreciate the creativity with it, but it still is kind of annoying. One thing I do like about them is that if you chase the mosquito enemies into one of the plants, the plant will actually eat them, which is a really cool touch. It's a shame that this place is basically just walking in a straight line with a bunch of annoying enemies and the annoying maggot water. There's this one cool part where you have to go up the plant vines and let them catch you, and out of the area that's probably the best part. Well, also Fleetopia. But other than Fleetopia, the whole Pale Lake, while looking pretty, serves basically no purpose. You can get a craft medal and start the Mr. Mushroom quest, but that's about it. And another reason why this place is worse than Bilewater is it's also just a lot smaller. There isn't as much design here, it's just straight lines. And to some people that might be a good thing because, well, if I don't like being in Bilewater, why would I want to be in it for a long time? Putrified Ducts is shorter, so I like it more. But for me, although I may not enjoy being in Bilewater, I can still appreciate how much bigger it is than Putrified Ducts. There's just a lot more to do, and that might not be a good thing to you, but I still think it's better than this. This is really just such a nothing area to me. 28. Bilewater. Oh wow, who would have guessed? As much as I think this area isn't as bad as a lot of people say, I still don't really like it that much. There's a lot here, and I can appreciate that there's a lot of content, but it almost feels like if it was all designed specifically for you to hate it. It almost reminds me of Blighttown from Dark Souls. It's sort of a poison swampy area, and everyone hates it, but it's meant to be that way. The thing with Blighttown, though, is that over time, people started to appreciate it a lot more. The narrative went from this place sucks to this place sucks, and I kind of like it. So to be honest, I wouldn't be that surprised if the same thing happens with Bilewater. If in a couple of years we see a lot of people saying that they actually really like this place, I mean, that would make sense to me, honestly. Hell, maybe even I'll change my mind. But one thing I will say first is this. For Blighttown, a lot of the reason why it works so well is because it's before Anor Londo. There's a reason why it sucks so much, because you want to get to the place that's better. But Bilewater doesn't really have that. It's just tucked into the corner of the map, and has nothing but suffering. Although, I mean, technically you kind of get the apostate key here, which leads to First Sinner, so maybe it is like that. There's a lot of vertical platforming in Bilewater, and I do enjoy it quite a lot. Because I just like platforming in general in this game, and this is some of the harder platforming. And not only that, but if you get the Wreath of Purity, this area actually isn't even that bad at all. The only problem is, though, I won't really count that too much in its favor because you have to go pretty out of your way to get the Wreath of Purity before coming here. It's hidden all the way in the Putrified Ducts, which, while I can't speak for everyone, I definitely did not know the Putrified Ducts even existed when I went to Bilewater. This place is also home to some really frustrating to deal with enemies. Of course, there's the ones that explode when you kill them and constantly respawn, but then there's also these guys that jump out of the swamp water and throw darts at you. Those ones are the worst because you just try to go to kill them and oops, they're back in the water. And we have to talk about the troll bench. I suppose I should have been able to tell considering the fact that it wasn't paid and everything is paid in this game. But if you think about it, how much funnier would it have been to make you pay for it and then you sit on it and then it just falls? That would have been even funnier, honestly. And it would have made me hate it even more. So while I do get some enjoyment out of Bilewater, especially if I bring the Wreath of Purity with me, because that maggot water is absolutely awful to deal with, it's hard to deny that out of every place in the whole game, there's only two that I actively dread going to: Putrified Ducts and Bilewater. So while I would like to play defense for this place, it's kind of hard to. 27. Wisp Thicket. After those bottom two placements, we're getting into a streak of areas that I would just consider mini areas. They all kind of have to place a little bit low because they're not real areas per se, and they're definitely lacking in content compared to basically everything above it and the ones below, but they're still all fun in their own right. As for the Wisp Thicket, I mean, I think it looks great. It's not my favorite looking area in the game, but it's definitely up there. The only problem is that it's just very small. The left half is basically just a straight line with a couple of enemies on it, and then the right path does have some fun platforming, but it's over, and then, okay, I guess I'm done with the Wisp Thicket. Out of the smaller areas, I think it definitely has the least to do, and most of my time spent here was spent actively fighting the boss, because there's basically nothing else to this place. For that, it kind of has to be low. 26. Red Memory. This is just a glorified cutscene if you really think about it, but I do enjoy the cutscene parts of this, and there is some platforming in between. I think the biggest appeal of this place is just to see some more backstory, and then of course seeing some places from the original Hollow Knight was awesome the first time. Visiting the distant village, and then the Hive, and then the White Palace. Of course it's only in vague interpretations of them, but even just seeing them at all was really sick. Again, this place isn't a real area per se, but I find the platforming to be pretty fun, and I enjoy the cutscenes. 25. The Cradle. The Cradle is similar to Red Memory in that it's basically just platforming. The first part of the Cradle is, it's alright, I guess. It basically just works as a lead up to Grandmother Silk. But what really puts this area above both Red Memory and the Wisp Thicket is the path to the surface. It's basically the path of pain in this game. I wouldn't say that it's as hard, but there's no checkpoints, and at the end you get all the way up directly to the surface. The platforming here is really fun, although of course pretty difficult, and being able to check out the surface for a little bit is always really cool. For that, I think this should place above Red Memory, but not above the next two. 24. Choral Tower. Replace the platforming in the last two areas with combat. This entire area is just enemy gauntlets. So then, why does it rank above the other ones? Well, because of two reasons. Number one, look at this place. It is my pick for the best looking area in the entire game. I really wish we got a full area of this place because it just looks amazing. And secondly, every enemy you fight here is actually unique to the Choral Tower. You're not just fighting a bunch of enemies you've already fought, they're all new, which I can really appreciate. I especially like the vibe that you're, going up the tower trying to get to the king, while he sends down his bodyguards at you, basically. It's a fun time, and I just really like the aesthetic. 23. The Mist. This is the last entry in our group of small quote-unquote areas. So why does this one place the highest? I think it's for multiple reasons. Number one, the music here is really good. Of course it's laid back, but it's also super mysterious. The look of this place in general is just very chill and mesmerizing almost. I do think the puzzle of using your needle in to find your way through is something that I would have probably never figured out on my own, but I still enjoy that it's there, because for more perceptive players they probably figured it out without any outside help. And then of course this includes the exhaust organ, which while a short section has a really good vibe as well. I think the Mist in general is just here for aesthetics, honestly. The music is great, the look is fantastic, and it provides a sort of feeling like nothing else in the whole game does. 22. High Halls. If you asked me when I first played this area, I would have put it a little bit lower, to be honest. And that's because this is really a tale of two halves. The platforming half and the combat half. Most of the platforming here revolves around the claw line. You have to grapple to these rings and ride them around as they move in circles and avoid enemies. But that's where my problem comes in. I find it really strange to try to dodge and fight enemies while I'm trying to hang on to these circles. I suppose the idea is that you're probably meant to pogo off of the enemies, but just in general, I found the combat here to be a little bit strange. There is this one part that I like where you're descending downwards and have to glide around all these spikes. That was pretty cool. But then, of course, that's when you get to the enemy gauntlet. And the thing about this enemy gauntlet is it's not that hard. The problem is that the hardest part is the very last part, and it's incredibly long. You have to fight wave after wave of enemies. It takes forever. It's kind of similar to, this is gonna sound stupid, but the Pantheon of Hollownest, where most likely the only part that you're actually gonna die on is the very end with those final bosses. But you have to replay through the whole thing anyway. I understand that they wanted to make it feel like a tough gauntlet, but at some point you just gotta be like, dang, another wave of enemies, really? Waiter, more enemies, please. Yeah, I would like the flying ones. Wait a minute, that's all of them. The one saving grace of this part is that the final section gang isn't as bad as it might seem. It does feel like they share some sort of Oro and Motto AI where they come in one at a time to attack you. There definitely are parts where they overlap, but they didn't just throw two enemies in a room and call it a day. If you keep calm and wait for them to come to you with their big slams, it's not so bad. 21. Wormways. Wormways is a very strange place because when I first got here, I almost thought it would be like a sort of intersection point that you just travel through to get to other places, but it's not really that. In fact, it's kind of just secluded off. It's basically just filled with a bunch of tight hallways and enemies coming out of the ceiling and floor. It almost feels similar to Deep Nest, at least the small tight hallway areas of Deep Nest. If it was just that, I would have put it a little bit lower, but it's not. This area actually has a really cool event that can happen. Later on in the game, it gets taken over by the Plasmium, and gets entirely new enemies as well. This is basically what they did with the Infected Crossroads, but better. The reason why it's better is because they don't close off pathways. You traverse it the same way, it's just got an entirely new aesthetic and entirely new enemies, with a new quest as well. I honestly still don't really even enjoy this area that much, but I just can't help but love when an area changes partway through the game. I didn't even find this place naturally, I only found it when I was trying to fill out the Hunter's Dirtle. Overall, I don't think it's that fun of an area, but it is also really cool what they did with it, so I can enjoy it enough to put it here. 20. Whiteward. There were multiple points in this game where I was thinking to myself, is this supposed to be a reference to Bloodborne? And I know I'm probably just brain rotted for that. Bloodborne didn't invent this aesthetic, but this along with Greymoor was really reminiscent of it to me. This place specifically feels a lot like the Research Hall and Upper Cathedral Ward areas. It's fairly small and there isn't much to do, but the vibes alone carry it. There's nothing like this anywhere else in the game, and I really appreciate it for what it is. The only problem is, like I said, there really isn't much to do here. You can get a spool fragment and get the injector band, which is really nice. But other than coming back to save Sherma and fighting the boss, it's really just here because it looks cool. 19. Lost Verdania. When I first came to this place, I was in awe. It looks absolutely gorgeous. In terms of gameplay though, I think it's alright. I really enjoy these plants that spew out a lot of things that you can sort of pogo on, but they run out after a bit of time, so you need to be quick. And I really enjoy how it's sort of a scavenger hunt. You're looking around for all the light that you need to open up the door to the Clover Dancers. Encountering the green prints throughout the area as well is really cool, and I think it builds up to the Clover Dancers nicely. My one main gripe with this area though is honestly the enemies. I do not enjoy the enemies here in the slightest. They range from alright to actively annoying. The worst offender being these small mantis guys which teleport around all over the place. If you didn't like the teleporting mages in the Soul Sanctum, you're gonna hate these guys. I think this area provides a lot of good platforming and looks stellar, but it's not the biggest place in the world and also just has a lot of annoying enemies to me. 18. Moss Grotto. What an amazing introduction. I couldn't tell you a better area to start the game on. Of course it's very simple, but it gets you used to the game well. The enemies don't have anything too crazy that can catch you off guard, and they have very basic attack patterns. I really like how there's this middle pit that you cross over multiple times while you're climbing up. I just think that's a neat touch. This area starts the game phenomenally, and I think I can easily say I prefer it to the King's Pass. That's not all though, because later on you come back here to go to Weave Nest Atla. You get to do your duo Moss Mother fight, right? There's just some simple rooms to go through here, and then of course there's the part where you can get the Mass Shard. But I really just think Moss Grotto excels at being simple. There's not that much to it, but that's the way it should be. 17. The Abyss. The best part about this area is the fact that it exists at all. I'm trying not to get the fact that it's literally the Abyss get in the way too much, but come on, it's so cool. All things considered, this area doesn't do that many references to the original Hollow Knight, so just getting a straight up area from that game was really interesting. Of course it has a completely different layout because you're in a different part of it, but it shares some of the same enemies and a lot of new ones. I think that's what's really good about it. It's an old area, but it is also completely new. I won't lie that the first half is basically just linear straight lines with some enemies, but once you get to the big pool, you have some fun platforming and you can obviously go get the Silksong, ending with the escape out while the lava is rising up. And that part can be debated whether it should count as part of the Abyss or part of Deep Docks, but I would personally count it as part of the Abyss. It's one of the most fun platforming gauntlets in the whole game, and I very much enjoy it as a way to cap off the Abyss the first time you go there. Even the way you enter the Abyss is really special, going through the little bell contraption. It's got a lot of fun, hard platforming, and has a vibe unlike anything else in the game. 16. Cogwork Core. The music for this place. I'm sure everyone had that moment when they entered the Cogwork Core for the first time and just realized, wait a minute, why is the music this insane? That aside though, it's a very strange place. You end up taking a U shape with these offshoots and then go up this big platforming gauntlet to the top. It's easily on the more linear side of areas. The enemies here are nothing special in my opinion, but that's not the main focus. The main focus is the platforming, which I do really enjoy. Especially the climb up to the top, which mainly focuses on you using the claw line. I like the parts where you're forced to jump off of the claw line and then go back onto it. And even just the platforming around the walls in general, it kind of reminds me of the White Palace. It's capped off with the puzzle, which I found a little bit strange, but it was still fun enough. I didn't really know if there's a way you're supposed to do it, so I just kind of kept hitting them until they lined up, and then once I got 2 to line up, I would just get the rest from there. This place isn't that big, but it has some really fun platforming and an amazing song as well. 15. Blasted Steps. When I first saw that this game had a desert area, I was ecstatic. I love desert areas. But the thing is, this game actually has 2, and this is my lesser preferred one by quite a bit. The reason for that is that this place honestly just feels like a linear enemy gauntlet. I don't mean to start off too negatively, but this area is incredibly linear. You basically just make your way from room to room to room, sort of like Hunter's March. But as you'll see, I have Hunter's March quite a bit higher than this one. And I think that's for multiple reasons. The first one is I don't really enjoy the enemies here nearly as much as that place. The judges are cool enough, but there's nothing here that I really enjoy fighting. Secondly, I don't think the platforming is that crazy either. I think it's good for its point in the game, but again, I think Hunter's March has a beat there. And of course, in aesthetics, I think Hunter's March is better as well. It might seem strange that I'm comparing this place to Hunter's March of all places, but I really do think it's the most apt comparison. The only part where this place splits off is where you fight the Great Conch Flies at the entrance to Sands of Karak. And that's not a bad thing. Not every area needs to have a bunch of ways to go at once. The format of it being a mostly linear platforming and enemy gauntlet works as the gatekeeper to Act 2, but it's just not my preferred type of area, to be honest. Yeah, so while editing this, I realized that I feel like I came across a little bit too negative on this section because I think I was just trying to explain why it wasn't higher, but I don't think I actually really explained why I even like it that much. Basically, it just looks awesome, and I like the wind mechanic as well. I still stand by the negatives that I said, but just to be clear, there is a lot that I do like about this place as well. 14. Sinner's Road. We're about at the middle of the list now, and I'd say every area from here up is pretty amazing. That said though, I'm sure a lot of people would disagree that Sinner's Road is amazing. First I'll talk about the positives though. I think the whole aesthetic is great, like the subtle leaves or whatever they are falling from the sky, and just the color palette in general. It almost feels like this is where the sinners are carried to go to the slab, and I mean, I'm sure that must be the lore. I also think this place has some cool platforming, and the whole idea with the bench breaking and you need to go behind it to fix it, that's just really cool. I enjoy fighting most of the enemies here, emphasis on most. The roaches are a little bit annoying. I think it gets not so bad the more you play, because you realize that they're very easily just you dash away and then you hit them and then you dash away. But when I first came to this place, I really struggled with these guys. And then of course this is the area that introduces the maggot water. Fun. It even has that one troll lever that just dumps you down into the maggots. But I don't know, I kinda like it. There's just something about this place that I like more than stuff like Bilewater. Maybe it's just the aesthetic, honestly. I just like how this place looks a lot. I'm sure this is a very strange ranking, especially to have it so much above stuff like Bilewater, but I do enjoy being here quite a bit more. So while I can't exactly put my finger finger on why. I just think it's, in general, got better enemies, and it's not as confusing to navigate either. 13. The Marrow. The first real area in the game. And damn, is it a good introduction. Right off the bat, you really feel like you have a lot of freedom and where to go. It's almost overwhelming. It's kind of reminiscent of the Forgotten Crossroads, where you're immediately presented with a choice of where to go. You can meet the Flea Caravan here, along with Grendel, my favorite character. It's just overall a very solid design. You also come back here for quite a few quests, like finding the Flint Beetles and fighting the Skull Tyrant. And in a way, I actually do prefer this to the Forgotten Crossroads. There's not as many little nooks and crannies to go to, and it's not as confusing to traverse. The Marrow feels very cohesive despite being pretty big and having a lot of pathways. Forgotten Crossways does too, but sometimes I feel like it just has a little bit too much, you know what I'm saying? 12. Memorium. I'm not really that into the lore or anything, but just from playing it, it almost feels like they were trying to preserve all of the biomes across Farloom. Either that or they're trying to genetically recreate them here. And because of that, it changes scenery quite a lot. You go through a lot of different places. It's a very compact area, and yet it has a lot of different stuff. One second you're fighting the stag beetle thingy from Farfield, and then the next you're in a Karak type area, and then in the next you're going through a Shellwood area, and now, oops, you're in Volt Nest. Part of me does think it's a little bit strange that this whole area essentially is just for the big flea. I do wish there could have been like a boss here or something, but that doesn't really play into the area ranking that much anyway. 11. Whispering Vaults. The main gimmick of this place are these blocks that you can push with your nail, and as far as gimmicks go, that's one of my favorites. I like crushing the enemies with the blocks and then using them to platform across the place. It's just a really fun gimmick in general, and I especially like the whole deal where you're kind of descending down as you go through. It's a lot different from most of the areas in this game because for the most part you're going upwards. I'm not the biggest fan of the enemies here, but honestly they don't like drag the area down or anything. 10. Underworks. Getting to the Underworks for the first time has got to be a top 10 moment in Silksong for me. It's just the feeling of, oh crap, we're in Act 2, and then, oh, we're in an entirely new place, an entirely new vibe. Although I know this wouldn't make any sense the first time I got here, I honestly thought I was below the whole map, cause you know, Underworks, but of course now I know that just means that it's under the Citadel. I like most of the enemies here, and honestly, the platforming is really cool too, because you have to jump on these blocks that are getting shredded and avoid the steam. There's a lot of secrets and different ways to go, and I especially like how this area is almost done in two halves. The first half you're on the left, and you go up to the Citadel, and then you come back down to do the right half and get the claw line. That's a really cool concept for an area. Sometimes the traversal's a little bit weird. Like, I don't know why we have to go all the way around when using this Ventricus. I do think one thing this area is sorely missing is a boss, and again, that's not really gonna factor into this ranking, but it feels that for such a big area, it should have a boss, right? And it just doesn't, which is odd. That said though, the whole aesthetic of this place is good, and the music works well with the theming. 9. Farfields. This area is very strange because almost similarly to Underworks, there's the first part that you go to at one point in the game, and then the second part you go to later, except the big difference here is that they are spread out way more. You come to Farfields very early on, but the second half you don't get to go to until way later, and I think that's kind of cool, but at the same time it also makes the area a little bit tricky to rank. The first half is honestly nothing special. You fight through some enemies and then that's when you get to the area where you obtain your glide. The highlight of the first visit is definitely gliding all the way up to go to Greymoor. I think that's a really cool set piece. But what puts Farfields this high for me is actually the second time you come here, because you go to this other part of the area where everything feels massive. The grass is huge and the enemies are too. And we also have a lot of platforming here across these big gaps that you have to use your claw line. Not to mention the whole sprinting area, where you get to go through these obstacle courses and race this guy. And I didn't even mention this because you can't do it the first time you come here, but there's also a really good mass shard. It's one of my favorites in the game, where if you have to go down to this lava pit, fight some enemies, and then climb your way up afterwards. 8. Hunter's March. This is another contender for best looking area in the game. On my first playthrough, this was the third area I went to. It was Moss Grotto, then the Marrow, then Hunter's March. And I'm sure I'm not the only one who did that. What's funny though is that this place is not necessary at all, at least not not until Act 3, and that's kind of a really fun thing to do. They put an area that's kind of harder than the stuff around it right at the beginning, so it usually gives you one of two responses. The people who are sensible and decide, you know what, I'm gonna come back here later. And then the people who like smashing their head against a brick wall. I'm sure I'm not the only one who tried way too many times to make this jump without a dash. This area is, like I said in the Blasted Steps section, mostly platforming, and by the end of it, you will be better at platforming in this game. It takes a lot of getting used to use the diagonal pogo, but once you're done with this place, you should be pretty good. I mean, I basically only use Wanderer's Crest, and I'm still used to the diagonal pogo because of this area. And the enemies are amazing too. I just really like this whole ant tribe of enemies, especially the type of leader guys. They have a very in-depth moveset for a normal foe, even compared to most later in the game enemies. This is one of my favorites in the whole game, honestly. And while yes, the area is still fairly linear, it does have some stuff you can do at the end while going to the Chapel of the Beast and going up to the one trapped bench. And oh, that's something I haven't even mentioned yet. This area is also littered with traps, which I'm sure a lot of people didn't like. I just think it adds to the vibe of this area. It really feels like you're trespassing on the ants' ground here. 7. Choral Chambers. Remember when I said that the Citadel would easily be number 1 if I combined all the areas? Well, this is the highest ranked part of the Citadel on the list. And that's crazy to me, because the Choral Chambers in of itself is basically just the glue that holds the Citadel together. Any area that isn't a more specific part belongs to the Choral Chambers. The standout thing about this place though is, of course, the music. Choral Chambers is almost the City of Tears in this game in terms of OST. There's a lot of enemies here, and most of the area is spent either fighting or platforming, which, now that I say that out loud, that just is kind of every area. But what I'm trying to say is that there's never a dull moment here. The enemies are a bit hit or miss for me. I do like most of them, but some of them I find a little bit tedious to deal with. And by that, I'm mainly just talking about the flying guys, because flying guys in general are just a little bit annoying. It's hard to describe the sense of awe you get from going through the Choral Chambers for the first time. It's really unparalleled by anything else in the game, and to be honest, that kind of carries it to this placement. It's really the Choral Chambers combined with every other part of the Citadel that makes the Citadel so amazing. So it's hard to really rank the Choral Chambers just on its own, but I still think it's really fun to go through them. 6. Deep Docks. What a cool setting. Having a sort of docks area over lava instead of water, I mean, come on. All the bell enemies are really cool too. There's a lot of elevators and platforms that you have to raise and lower. It really helps it feel like you're in the sort of industrial docks area. The best part of this place hands down though is after you use the simple key. There's just a lot of lifts and enemies, and it's just really fun. I especially like the section with the huge slugs that you have to jump past, even though it can be kind of hard to do so sometimes. I think this might be a little bit unfair to do, but the fact that this area does connect to the Abyss also gives it some points for me. I just find it really cool. So while I don't think this place has the most stuff, or is the most interesting on its own, I just have a really good time here. 5. Sands of Karak. This is the other desert area in the game, and you're about to see that I do really like the platforming in Silksong, because that's basically what this area is. You have this unique platforming mechanic where you sort of hit a pearl out of the thingy, and then you have to jump on the platforms that sprout out of it, but of course they disappear over time. And this is used in some really cool ways for platforming. I do think in terms of straight platforming, this is probably the second best area in the game, and I mean, if you've played, you definitely know what number 1 is. And it's almost funny because that's basically the whole thing. You just use these platforms and go across them while fighting some enemies, but it's just really fun to do. And it goes on for longer than I'm making it seem. It's not just like a super short area. And hey, there's more to it, because you can also go to Volt Nest, which I find to be one of my favorite sub-areas in the game. I just think it has a really cool vibe, even though it's fairly short. I like dodging the electricity, and of course the purples just look amazing. It almost reminds me of Fog Canyon. And then you also have the short little section before you can get the crust nut for the Pale Oil quest. I don't love having to break these things over and over and over, but I still find fun here. Overall, Sands of Karak is an incredibly fun area. I do think the enemies are a little bit lackluster, but it's mainly focused on platforming, so I'm not going to fault it too bad for that. And for someone who very much enjoys the platforming, this is easily one of my favorite areas. 4. The Slab. The Slab contains probably my single favorite section of the whole game, and that's of course the prison escape sequence. Getting captured, again, sorry to bring up Bloodborne, but it really reminded me of Bloodborne when you get captured to go to the Hypogean jail. And just like in that game, it's incredibly unexpected. One second you're just fighting a normal enemy, and then the next you're like, what's happening? Oh, I'm in a cutscene now. It really feels like you're on the back foot, because you don't have your weapons, so you do barely any damage, and you have to rely on the traps to kill enemies in some rooms, which was just my favorite thing ever when I realized that. I also like how you scale around the outsides, and then go through the cold, running to the sources of heat. Oh, it's just so peak, especially the moment where you get your stuff back, and then the remix of the Hornet theme starts playing. It's literally peak. So if this area contains my single favorite section in the whole game, why isn't it higher? Well, it is just that section. Once you do that, there's basically nothing else, other than the Apostate Key rooms, which includes one admittedly pretty fun platforming challenge, and then the first Sinner boss, which, well, I mean, it's literally my favorite boss, but I'm not counting that in favor of the area. This place does a really good job at making an atmosphere, and it makes you feel kinda gross. Not as gross as something like Bilewater, but you definitely wouldn't want to be a prisoner here. I mean, obviously. 3. Mount Fae. This is an all-or-nothing area, and if you don't like the platforming in this game, you're not gonna like this area. There's basically no combat here, just straight platforming, and I really like the idea. You go through this super long platforming gauntlet to unlock the double jump. It makes a lot of sense to me. Of course, that's not even considering the cold mechanic, where you need to be fast or else you'll die of frostbite, or hypothermia, one or the other. It's a lot of vertical platforming, which this game uses a lot, so it's a good way to teach that before you get to sections like the path to the surface and the way out of the abyss. And I mean, hey, this area is a setting I never thought we would get in a Hollow Knight game. I mean, snowy? What? Kingdom's Edge sort of felt like that, but this is just straight up snow. I mean, I don't know if in the lore it's actually snow. I think the biggest strength here is just how long it is. It really feels like a gauntlet, or I guess more accurately, it really feels like you're climbing a mountain. It's hard to really say more about this place because it is just a bunch of platforming, but it's a bunch of really fun platforming. So personally, I was always gonna love this area. 2. Shellwood. I know I've said this a lot, but this is yet another contender for the best looking area in the game. I mean, seriously, how do you have so many different places that all look amazing but in different ways? I love the dark greens combined with the white flowers, and then the music is just really chill as well. For the number 2 spot, you might be wondering what makes this place so good, but the honest answer is it's just solid in every way. I have nothing bad I can say about this area. The platforming is really fun. I like the enemies a lot, especially the stick bug guys. I already mentioned how good it looks, and you can come back here later in the game. When you come back here in Act 3, it's a different part of the Shellwood, and it looks even better somehow, especially the arena for the Seth boss fight. It's just beautiful. The section when you come back isn't very long or anything, but it's just another thing to add to this area. And I like how this place sort of loops back into Belheart. You leave Belheart to do this place, and then go back into Belheart to fight Widow. I know that's almost more like a Belheart feature, but I still think it's worth mentioning for this area as well. Or not as well, because I didn't rank Belheart, but you know what I'm saying. This place is stunning to look at, has an amazing song, and it's just super fun. What else is there to say? 1. Greymoor. You probably could have guessed that this would be number 1, because if I had to take a wager, I'd say this is the most common number 1. I don't have any basis for that, I'm just assuming, because, I mean, look at this place. The aesthetic is fantastic. And not only that, but Greymoor is huge. It's probably competing with Underworks and Choral Chambers for what is the largest area in the game. There's just so much to it. On the right side, you can go to the Crawl Lake and fight all the Purred enemies and get your Shaw ability. And then on the left, you can fight the Scissors guys while going up the windmills, or go through the little sewerage area until you get to Moorwing. I know some people don't like some of these enemies, particularly the one that throws like a primal aspid. And while I can agree that I'm not the biggest fan of flying enemies, I think if they were gonna do flying enemies, I'm most okay with it being the bird guys, if that makes any sense. And to be honest, everything else about this place is just so great that I don't really mind. And I mean, hey, I haven't even mentioned the entrance yet. Flying up through Farfields all the way through the floor to get up to here, and this is what you're welcomed with? That's gotta be another top 10 moment in the game, right? There's so much to do here, and you'll constantly be coming back throughout the playthrough. On top of that, it looks amazing and has a good soundtrack. I just don't have much else to say because this place is really perfect in every way. Well, I shouldn't say every way because nothing's perfect, but for me, it's still a 10 out of 10, even if it's not technically perfect. So yeah, that's my ranking. While this was pretty hard to make, I am happy with it overall. To some, areas might actually be more important than bosses because they make up the majority of your playtime. And I'd say overall, Silksong did a really good job with the areas. Some enemies can be a little bit frustrating to deal with, but I do think I enjoy way more areas than I don't in this game. So yeah, if you enjoyed and would like to see more like this, I'd appreciate a like or subscribe. See ya if I see ya.